images are, the one is the, what he is describing here, Indra and Kutsa. Kutsa is the human being, imperfect human being, who are traveling in the same. And what is this travel? Travel is yoga. You start from ignorance and go to knowledge. That's the journey of the chariot. And what is the chariot? Your body. And Krishna is the divine soul within you. And you are the human being traveling. And by the time you finish your yoga, you have become so divine. All your imperfections have been thrown out. And you are resembling the divine so much in your actions, okay, that only Shachi, who is the wife of Indra, because she is truth conscious, she recognizes the difference, but the others can't. Okay, that's what the image. But there is another image also in the Katha Upanishad, and that's also very interesting because it goes in much more detail. It says, it's the reference is 1, 3, 3 and 4, 2 verses, 3 and 4 in the third section. Atmanam rathinam vidhi, shariram rathamevatu, buddhim tu sarathim vidhi, mana pragrahamevacha. So, the second one also is there, but this one also. Atmanam rathinam vidhi. Okay, your soul, take it to be the charioteer. Okay, shariram, your body is the ratha. Okay, is the chariot. Okay, and the psychic being in you is trying to guide you. In the beginning, not very successfully, but towards the end, more and more successfully. Okay, buddhim tu sarathim vidhi. Okay, the buddhi, your buddhi is the charioteer in the beginning. Okay, mana pragraham evacha, your mind is the reins. Okay, the reins. And what are the horses? Indriyani hayan ahu. This they are spoken of. Your senses are the horses. And the mind is trying to control the horses. It's a very beautiful image. Okay, so, and Vishayan, the sense objects, are the field in which the horses are moving. Now see the image as well as the relevance to the actual truth. Your senses are going about roaming and trying to enjoy and possess sense objects. And the sense objects are the objects in the physical world. And your senses are the horses running wild in this field of the Vishayan. Vishaya is the sense objects. Okay. So, Atmanam Indriyam Atmendriyam Manoyuktam. These you have to Bhokta iti ahur manishina. Then the Atma, you have to identify yourself with your soul, and then you become the enjoyer of everything. That's the Katha Upanishad. So the image is very interesting. It is much more detailed than Kutsa and Indra. Your body is a chariot. Your mind is the Sarathi in the beginning. Later on it becomes a psychic being. In the beginning, you are trying to control, and your senses are the horses running usually wild. Okay, we can't control our senses. They go out and they want to enjoy everything: eyes, ears, tongue, taste, and all this touch. Also, we want pleasant touches, pleasant food, pleasant sound, pleasant sights. We want, and that is enjoying. So this is the image given in the Katha Upanishad. So two images, and it is so. So this is the image in the Gita, and it's very, very symbolic. That's what said this particle. Now we read each sentence. Okay. Arjuna is the fighter in the chariot with the divine Krishna as his charioteer. Arjuna is the fighter. Okay. Are we not fighting? When yoga starts, we are fighting our limitations. So, and our obstructions. We are fighting, trying to get rid of our impurities. In the Veda, also, we have this image of the human soul and the divine riding in one chariot through the great battle to the goal of a high aspiring effort. The great battle is the yoga. Okay, it's very great because it's very, very subtle and very long and painstaking. Nobody is going to tell you that yoga is easy. Okay, it's a great battle to the goal of a high aspiring effort. You start as a man, but you become the divine in the end. No other spiritual system has the power and the courage and the audacity to say that you are the divine essentially and you can become the divine. Okay. So, the goal of a high aspiring effort. But there it's a pure figure and a symbol. Okay. There it's a pure, in the Veda, it's a pure figure and a symbol. The divine is there, Indra, master of the world of light and immortality. Why is using the word but? We will see later on. But in the Veda, it's a pure figure of symbol. But in the Gita, it is not a symbol, it's a fact. It's a physical reality. The Gita is telling you how to act in the physical world. It's not just a teaching, it's a practical truth. That's why he's using the word but. Okay. But there is a pure figure, but there in the Veda, it's a pure figure and symbol. The divine is there again, Veda. Indra, master of the world of light and immortality. The power of divine knowledge which descends to the aid of the human seeker, battling with the sons of falsehood, darkness, limitation, mortality. In the Veda, the image is always the gods are fighting with the asuras and the dark vritra, and these are the words used in the, they are the sons of darkness, falsehood, limitation and mortality. If you remember, the supreme will link it to some of the what we are saying in the Life Divine. Okay, the one becomes first of all two, Diti and Aditi, the oneness and the multiplicity. Multiplicity is Aditi. Aditi is the oneness. Aditi, not two, but one. Okay, and Diti is the beginning of the multiplicity, the division. So the division is leading to falsehood, and therefore all the asuras are the sons of Diti. Okay, so they are the sons of darkness, and what's she using the words? Darkness, falsehood, limitation, mortality. There's a truth. Huh? Tell me. And Aditi is the mother of the gods. Actually, they are cousins. If you see their Life Divine in the Supermind, if you remember, the first status is oneness. The second status, the beginning of the multiplicity. Their waves are forming. In the third one, the waves have become very clear. And in the overmind consciousness, the multiplicity is becoming a fact. And it can go towards the purity of the gods, it can go towards the impurity of the asuras. But this is a symbol, and even the impurities have their function. Okay, that's at their lowest level, it becomes apparently darkness, okay, limitation, mortality, falsehood. The battle is with spiritual enemies who bar the way to the higher world in our being. This is the entire Vedas is exactly this. Okay, the gods are battling with the asuras, and they don't use the word asura necessarily because sura means God, asura means not God. Okay, in Sanskrit, and then you have the vritras and the panis. Okay, they are the ones who don't allow the progress to go smoothly. They are the ones who obstruct you. So, and again in Sanskrit, the word vri means to cover. Your true knowledge is being covered. And vritra also refers to the wolf who is tearing. He can tear apart your oneness. Okay. So, and the panis are the ones who hide in the darkness of the lower world. They hide and don't allow you to access the light, which is hidden in the inconscient. The cows are the symbol of light, and there is light, but they are captured. All these cows are captured and put into the prison house of the inconscient. That's a Vedic image. Okay, so now I read the next sentence. So, the battle with the spiritual enemies who bar the way to the higher world of our being, and the goal is that plane of vast being resplendent with the light of the supreme truth and uplifted to the conscious immortality of the perfected soul. The perfected soul, it has lost its identification with body, mind, life and become pure, of which Indra is the master. The human soul is Kutsa. Even the word Kutsa is interesting because Kutsa means something not very good, okay? In Bengali, you have the word Kutsit, which is very bad, okay? So Kutsa is representative. When you, human being is full of, in the beginning, to begin with, falsehood, division, darkness, okay? And he is traveling with Krishna, Indra in the chariot. The human soul is Kutsa, which constantly seeks the seer knowledge. He is seeking for knowledge, as his name implies. Okay, and he is the son of Arjuna or Arjuni. Okay, Arjuni is the son of Arjuna, so you have to pronounce it Arjuni. It becomes the, it takes a vriddhi. There is the, it takes a vriddhi. It becomes Arjuni, the white one, child of Switra, the white mother. He is, that is to say, the sattvic or purified and light-filled soul, which is open to the unbroken glories of the divine knowledge. Note the word unbroken. That means not the multiplicity, but the oneness. Okay. When you get the oneness, you are in a divine consciousness. When you see brokenness and multiplicity, you are in the ignorance. And when the chariot reaches the end of its journey, which is the home of Indra, the human Kutsa has grown into such an exact likeness of the divine companion that he can only be distinguished by Shachi, the wife of Indra, because she is truth conscious. The parable is evidently of the inner life of man. It's a figure of the human growing into the likeness of the eternal divine by an increasing illumination of knowledge. But, again, Srendra is using the word but, he is making a distinction between the image in the Veda and the Gita. But the Gita starts from action, not theory, okay? And Arjuna is a man of action and not of knowledge. The fighter, never the seer or the thinker. So they is making a very clear distinction between the Veda, which is knowledge, it is theory. Okay, it corresponds to the ascent. This human soul ascends to the lower, higher levels and gets the knowledge. But that knowledge has to be brought down, and that's the Gita is telling you how to do it. The Gita starts from action in the physical world, not knowledge in the higher worlds. And Arjuna is a man of action and not of knowledge. He gets knowledge later on, but not immediately. The fighter, never the seer or the thinker. Okay? Very beautiful para explaining what Arjuna is and what human beings are. They are potentially divine, but they are starting from the confusion of the ignorance. And he has to be guided by the divine. And that guiding is the journey, and the chariot is the body, mind, life that you have. Okay? We go to the next one. From the beginning. From the beginning of the Gita.
Shall I read?
Yes, do that.
From the beginning of the Gita, this characteristic temperament of the disciple is clearly indicated, and it is maintained throughout. It becomes first evident in the manner in which he is awakened to the sense of what he is doing, the great slaughter of which he is to be the chief instrument, in the thoughts which immediately rise in him, in the standpoint and the psychological motives which make him recoil from the whole terrible catastrophe. They are not thoughts. They are not the thoughts, the standpoint, the motives of philosophical or even of a deeply reflective mind or spiritual temperament confronted with the same or a similar problem. They are those, as we might say, of the practical or the programmatic man, the emotional, sensational, moral, intelligent human being, not habituated to profound and original reflection or any sounding of the depth, accustomed rather to high but fixed standards of thought, action, and difficulties. Now finds all the standards failing him and with his confidence in himself and his life shone away from under him at a single stroke. That is the nature of the crisis which he undergoes.
So the Gita is Sri Aurobindo is continuing and showing you the image, the symbolic nature of the Arjuna and Krishna and the chariot. Okay, so from the beginning, this is Sri Aurobindo is going on stressing. Gita is a manual for action in the physical world. He's going on stressing that again and again. Karma Yoga, okay? Not only Jnana Yoga. The Jnana Yoga goes and gives you knowledge. Your soul ascends there and is very satisfied. The soul doesn't care for action in the physical world. In the Jnana Yoga, even to a certain extent in the Bhakti Yoga also, you don't care for the world. But here in Sri Aurobindo's stress is always on action in the physical world. That's very interesting because that is the reason why Sri Aurobindo was taken as a small child to England, which is the West. And the West is action oriented in the physical world. In India, mostly yogis are ascending and being very satisfied with that, not interested in the physical world. And that's why India suffered so much in the physical world. It became ignorant, poverty, okay, degradation, lack of literacy, no education. This is what happened to India because they were neglecting the physical world. So that had to be corrected. That's why he had to be taken to the West and say, not only spirituality, but also action in the physical world. Go, train yourself in England for 14 years or 13 years, 14 years, okay? From the age of 7 to the age of 20, 21, I think, okay? So get trained and don't give up the physical world. So come back now to India and realize what has to be done to perfect the action in the physical world. Okay, we had to be trained for that. So I start reading each sentence. From the beginning of the Gita, this characteristic temperament of the disciple is clearly indicated and it is maintained throughout. What is his character? He is a fighter. He is a normal human being trying to understand the higher principles. This is the simple, okay, characteristic temperament of the disciple. You begin from imperfections and go towards perfection. Is clearly indicated in the, and maintained throughout. That's the reason why even towards the end, even in the later chapters, when Sri Krishna reveals himself, okay, he is still ignorant. And when he sees the divine, the universal Vishwarupa, he is frightened. He can't bear the sight. And he tells him, please, please, take back your Saumya Rupa, take back your gentle form. I don't want to see this Raudra form. Okay, so he is a human being. And then he apologizes also to Sri Krishna and says, I did not know that you are the divine. And if I have insulted you unknowingly or knowingly in the banquet or in the when we are all together, when we are eating together, then please excuse me. Okay, he says that, and be like a father to a son who has made a mistake. So he is very human. That's what Sri Aurobindo is saying. Maintained throughout, right up to the 17th, 18th chapter, 16th chapter, I think. Okay. So it becomes first evident in the manner in which he is awakened to the sense of what he is doing. All human beings make mistakes, but time comes when you realize that, oh, what I did was wrong. Okay? And this also is very interesting because in India there are many, many cases where this happens. Okay? I'll give you two instances. Jagai and Madhai, okay, they were drunkards and they attacked Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. They attacked him. And later on, they became his disciples. This is one example. Then you have the example of Peter also in Christianity. He is actually against Christianity. And when he is walking in one from, I think, Damascus, when he is walking, suddenly Christ comes to him. He sees the vision of Christ and says, why do thou persecutest me? So then he becomes a disciple. So this is also symbolic. Sri Krishna is a human being and later on he has to be guided to become the perfect human divine soul. Okay. So he suddenly realizes that what he's going to do is wrong. He is a Kshatriya, he has to kill. But who is he going to kill? He is going to kill his own cousins, his own uncles, his own family members, maybe even in-laws. So how can he do that? He can't do that. Then the vital revolts. And the vital says, I will not be able to do. In fact, he gets nervous. And this is a sign that when you withdraw, okay, when you shrink from a very Ghora karma, when you see something which is very, very terrible, is a weakness of the vital. It starts trembling. Okay. This is a common experience even in ordinary life. When you get angry, your body will start trembling. Okay. Or when you are shrinking from something, you will go away from there. Okay. I know of people who, when they see blood, okay, they faint. They are normally quite okay, but they faint when they see blood. We had many cases in the ashram like that. So this is a nervous weakness. Okay, even when you see some suffering, okay, you shrink from it. You will not be able to bear it. So Arjuna is undergoing the same thing. When he says, I will not be able to kill, it's a weakness, nervous weakness, nothing else. The man who is a spiritual man will say, there will be no nervousness in him at all. He will be absolutely unaffected by the emotions in the physical world, and he will say, I will do what the divine wants me to do. If the divine wants me to be quiet and calm, I'll do that. And the divine tells me, kill this. It's just an action. Okay. Like the storm. The storm has no intentions. It is just a force of life. So you have to become an instrument of the divine in that way. Okay. So the divine tells you, do this work. It is necessary for my work in the physical world. You will do it. That's what happens in the end to Arjuna. Okay. So it becomes very first evident in the manner in which he is awakened to the sense of what he is doing, the great slaughter of which he is a chief instrument, and the psychological motives which make him recoil from the whole terrible catastrophe. Shilpa, the word catastrophe has to be pronounced as catastrophe. If you don't pronounce it, then it becomes French, catastrophe. Okay, but in English you have to pronounce that catastrophe. Okay, so they are not the thoughts, the standpoint, the motives of a philosophical or even of a deeply reflective mind or a spiritual temperament confronted with the same or a similar problem. Again and again he is stressing that it is the human being who is being dealt with by Krishna. He is not a spiritual man. He is not even a very intellectual person. Sridhar is making it very clear. Again and again he stresses this aspect because spiritual life can be lived in the physical world. That's his whole stress. Again and again he uses that. In the previous para he has used the word but twice, okay, to make stress that I want action in the physical world to be perfect. Okay, so they are not the thoughts, the standpoint, the motives, or a philosophical or even a deeply reflective mind or spiritual temperament confronted with the same or a similar problem. They are those, as we might say, of the practical, the pragmatic man, the emotional, sensational, moral, and intelligent human being, not habituated to profound and original reflection or any sounding of the depths. The word sounding is very clear. Okay, it's not the usual sound. There are several meanings of sound. In fact, there are three meanings. One is noise. The other is very healthy. Oh, he's got a sound mind and a sound body. And sounding is to judge. Okay, you take a measure and you sound the depth of an ocean. So this is used in that third sense. Okay, sounding the depths, measuring the depths, accustomed rather to high but fixed standards of thought and action, and a confident treading through all vicissitudes and difficulties. Vicissitudes, the ups and downs of life. Okay, this is a word which Sridhar uses very often. So you get that into your mind. Vicissitudes, ups and downs of life, happiness, sorrow, okay, success, failure. These are all the ups and downs of life. and difficulty, who now finds all his standards failing him because he is the Kshatriya and his standards are brave and the governance of right. Okay, they fail him. He is supposed to destroy the wrong, sinners, but now he can't. He can't do that, and that's his Kshatriya aim. But he can't do that, and all the basis of his confidence in himself and his life shone away, torn away, shone to shear, to cut away from under him at a single stroke. His nervousness becomes very apparent. In fact, in the Gita goes very far. It says he drops the Gandiva and starts trembling. His body starts trembling. Okay, that much he is affected. That is the nature of the crisis which he undergoes. All human beings at one time or other realize that what they are doing is wrong, and when there is a ghora karma, you can't do it. The weakness of the vital has to go. Okay, so we go to, and note also the word practical and pragmatic. Pragmatic means very, very practical, action oriented. We have got time, we can read the next one also. Yasmin, will you read?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. Arjuna is in the language of the Gita.
Arjuna is, in the language of the Gita, a man subject to the action of the three gunas or modes of the nature force and habituated to move unquestioningly in that field, like the generality of men. He justifies his name only in being so far pure and sattvic as to be governed by high and clear principles and impulses, and habitually control his lower nature by the noblest law which he knows. He is not of a violent asuric disposition, not the slave of his passions, but has been trained to a high calm and self-control, to an unswerving performance of his duties and firm obedience to the best principles of the time and society in which he has lived and the religion and ethics to which he has been brought up. He is egoistic like other men, but with the purer or sattvic egoism, which regards the moral law and society and the claims of others not only or predominantly his own interests, desires, and passions. He has lived and guided himself by the Shastras, the moral and social code, the thought which preoccupies him, the standard which he obeys is the Dharma, the collective Indian conception of the religions, of the religious, social, and moral rule of conduct, and especially the rule of the station and function to which he belongs. He is the Kshatriya, the high-minded, self-governed, chivalrous prince and warrior and leader of Aryan men. Following always this rule, conscious of virtue and right dealing, he has traveled so far and finds suddenly that it has led him to become the protagonist of a terrific and unparalleled slaughter, a monstrous civil war involving all the cultured Aryan nations, which must lead to the complete destruction of the flower of their manhood and threaten their ordered civilization with chaos and collapse.
Yeah. Biggish para, and he is again telling what the Arjuna is and his nature. Again, he is stressing the imperfection of the human being before he starts his yogic practice. So, again and again, is stressing this. The Gita is guiding the normal man in the physical world to get the right attitude towards action in the physical world. He is not interested in the Jnana Yoga or the Bhakti Yoga. That will come later on. But Gita is mainly how to do action in the physical world. Okay, that we'll see later on. By samatha, by becoming absolutely equal to everything, by silencing the mind. These are the methods you have to use. Okay, so now I read each sentence. Arjuna is, in the language of the Gita, a man subjected to the action of the three gunas or modes of the nature force and habituated to move unquestioningly in that field like the generality of men. All human beings are subject to the modes of nature or the gunas. And what are the gunas? The Sankhya philosophy, Sattva, Rajas, Tavas. Sattva corresponds to the mind, okay, with some sort of illumination. Rajas corresponds to the vital, whose main characteristic is action, force, movement, okay, not stability, but movement all the time. And Tamas, the principle of stability in the body. Now, stability is very interesting. It can be a positive thing, but it can also be a very negative thing, because stability means no movement, and no movement means no effort to improve. So that's why it is tamas, darkness. Okay, and the other one, okay, so but stability is good. If there's no stability, how will you have a firm base on which to act? Okay, not only that, if stability is not there, all the forms in the physical world will be going on changing their forms. So how will you deal practically? So all these three principles are absolutely essential. Tamas is necessary, but tamas is stability, which is good. It gives permanence to forms, relative permanence. But a stone remains a stone for a long time. Okay, but it is not moving. It's not going towards some progress. So Rajas has to come in. Force has to come in. Life and desire comes in. Change, for God's sake, don't remain the same. Okay, so Rajas has to come in. But Rajas is without knowledge and it goes left and right into all sorts of channels, explores everything and goes often wrong, mostly wrong. So then mind has to come and say, hey, all your movements are not correct. So all the three are there. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. But no, interestingly, they are all chains that bind man. Okay, the tamas is the iron chain that imprisons your soul. Okay, rajas is the silver chain. It's a chain, but it allows you some movement. It's a silver chain, slightly better. Okay, and your sattva, which is the principle of light and knowledge and understanding and harmony, is also a chain, but it's a golden chain. These images are of Ramakrishna's images. Okay, so all of them are imprisoning the soul. This is the normal condition of man, and Arjuna is very content to live in that consciousness. Okay, so Srindu is continuing, and is habituated to move unquestioningly. Nobody questions these values. Okay, the body has the right to enjoyment, and the normal man does that. The vital has the right to enjoyment, he does that. And the mind also somewhat is used for knowledge in the physical world, practical knowledge, it does that. It's very, very ordinary, unquestioningly in that field, like the generality of men. He justifies his name, we'll discuss this, only in being so far pure and sattvic as to be governed by high and clear principles and impulses and habitually control his lower nature by the noblest law which he knows. The noblest law which he knows. He is a Kshatriya. So, the word Arjuna means actually in Sanskrit white, clear, bright, color of the day. Okay, this is what Arjuna means. So, Srindu is saying white, clear, pure. Okay, is he really that? So, Srindu is saying Arjuna is in the language of the Gita. Okay. Sorry, I am reading wrong. He justifies his name, okay? Arjuna justifies his name by being pure, but at what level? At the sattvic level, at the moral level. He is exactly that. At the moral level, he is white, clear, bright, and pure to that extent. But still, he is a normal human being. He justifies his name only in being so far pure and sattvic as to be governed by high and clear principles and impulses and habitually control his lower nature by the noblest law which he knows. So he is a representative of normal man who is at the highest human level. Sattvic man, ready for a spiritual life, but not yet practicing the life. Okay, he is not a violent asuric disposition, not the slave of his passions, but has been trained to a high calm and self-control, to an unswerving performance of his duties and firm obedience to the best principles of his time and society in which he has lived, and the religion and ethics to which he has been brought up. He is egoistic like other men, but the purer or sattvic egoism, which regards a moral law and society as the claim of others, and not only or predominantly his own interests, desires, and passions. He is accommodative to other beings. He realizes they also have a right. He is not over egoistic. He is egoistic, but he is not over egoistic. And he realizes that society also has its due, and others also have their, they are also justified in following their own interests. That's what he's saying. He has lived and guided himself by the Shastra, the moral and social code. There you are. The normal man, if he lives only in his body consciousness, he is an animal. If the normal man, if he lives more in the vital, he lives an uncontrolled, sinful life. If he is a sattvic man, he is leading a moral life, trying to control his vital. Okay, these are the three grades. So the thought which preoccupies him, the standard which he obeys is a dharma. Now the word dharma is highly interesting because dharma has absolutely no correspondence in the English language or any other European language. Dharma is, the root is coming from dhri, to hold stably. Dhri, to hold. Okay. So dharma, what are you holding? At the every level that you are holding on to the law which is relevant to that level. So if you are a Kshatriya, you are holding on to the laws of the Kshatriya. Okay? If you are a Brahmin, you are holding on to the laws of knowledge, okay, whatever it is. Okay? And exactly in the same way also the Vaishya and the Shudra. The Shudra's dharma is service, humility, okay, attention to elders. That is his dharma. So dharma is a word which is often interpreted as duty, but it's not duty. Dharma is available at all the levels. There is a physical dharma, there is a vital dharma, there is a mental dharma, there is also a spiritual dharma. Okay. So dhri, to hold on to the laws that operate at that level. That collective Indian conception of the, see, Srimati is saying it's a collective conception. It's not one thing. Religious, social, and moral rule of conduct. In the religion, the dharma is whatever religion tells you to do. Okay, so, and especially the rule of the station and function to which he belongs. He is the Kshatriya, the high-minded, self-governed, chivalrous prince, okay, and warrior and leader of Aryan men. Following always this rule, conscious of virtue and right dealing, he has travelled so far and finds suddenly that it has led him to become the protagonist, the hero, okay, of a terrific and unparalleled slaughter, a monstrous civil war involving all the cultured Aryan nations, which must lead to the complete destruction of the flower of their manhood and threatens their ordered civilization with chaos and collapse. So he fails, his courage fails, and he throws down the Gandiva and says, I am not capable of doing such a horrible work. I am a Kshatriya and I will not submit myself to unjustified slaughter and murder. So this is what he says. So we come to the end of our paragraph and we'll take up the next one. It is typical again. So Srimati is very clearly saying how he has to be, the normal man has to be guided for action in the physical world. And he gets often confused. Okay, that's what he's saying. Okay, we stop here today and we note down Gita, page 20, and we read from It is Typical again. Okay. Au revoir, everybody, and have
Merci,
a
Thank you, Rangadhar.
not have a nice day, have a nice year.
Yes.
Yeah, all of you. Okay.
Thank you, Rangadhar. Bonne année.
Au revoir, bonne année, happy new year to everybody.